Hey everybody, Ben here from the Bonehead podcast and welcome to Old World Alliance starting rosters. So we're looking at all the teams from the Blood Bowl 2020 rulebook and figuring out just what you can take for League. So we're not necessarily diving into building your players and things like that, but we are looking at just what you can get on the pitch for $1 million gold ready for you to run these teams in the next season. So we didn't really have a lot of time to get the Old World Alliance to the table in Blood Bowl 16. Where did they land? In July or something? And then the leaks came out in late August. So didn't really get a chance to play OWL. In fact, we didn't even get a chance to get them finished, painted, so we could play them for 7 Super Series. But what can you do? So they have changed up a bit and they've got even more expensive. In some ways they've got better. The loner for most of these players has dropped from 4+ to 3+. The human thrower has gone up 10k. Now, if you've seen our human video, you'll know that the human thrower is one of the best passes in the game. So let's just have a look at the OWA thrower and try and explain why he's gone up in price. So Old World Alliance, yeah, there you go. Pass, sure hands. It's got animosity to all dwarves and halflings, but otherwise 6/3, 3+, 3+, 9+. 80k. So he's your sure hands piece if you want one. The dwarf blockers have gone up 5k. The human catchers have gone up 5k. The runners and the slayers, well, one of each, has gone up 5k as well, which does sting as far as building the rosters go, because it is an expensive team with 70k rerolls. There are a few positive changes here. So the first is that halflings no longer have loner. So those very pricey 70k rerolls now can be used to land the halflings if you want to go for a cheeky throw teammate. And if you want to make that throw teammate even easier, you get a tree man instead of the ogre, but you do get a tree man. Now, I mentioned loner for these players. So all the dwarves have got loner, but it's loner 3+, which is definitely not a gimme. But 3+ is a lot better than the 4+ it used to be. The ogre and the tree man stay at 4+, however. So this is rated as a tier 1 team. I'm not sold. I think it's a solid tier 2, and I think it's going to be quite difficult to pilot. But when it starts coming together, you're going to end up with one of the most unique teams out there. And each one of your players, because generally speaking, you can only take one of each positional, it's going to feel quite unique. They're going to get character really quickly. So the cool thing about this team is that there's so many different positionals, so there is quite a lot of variance when it comes to building a roster. They're expensive, their rerolls are expensive, and you only start with $1 million gold. Over time you can build it up, but what we've done is we've put together a few different rosters to kind of give you some inspiration on where you can take this team. So the first one we're going to look at is the human heavy build. Comes in at 995, so no spare cash. You get an ogre, you get a human thrower, you get a human blitzer, 7 linemen takes you up to 10, and then you get 2 halflings and 3 rerolls. So this is very much human centric. It does bring into question why you wouldn't just run a human team. Now the halflings are on the human roster, but if you want to start out here and then bring in the dwarf elements, what you do here is you've got the blocker, you've got sure hands pass, you've got an ogre to smash things, a halflings to get thrown, and a bunch of linemen to just soak it up with those 3 rerolls. Over time, you can add your pieces as you need, and I think it's going to be a more familiar build this way, because it could be taken with the human roster, but if you want to go human heavy, you can do it. But part of the spice of the OWA roster is that they've got dwarves and humans and halflings, so let's have a look at this one that's got all of them. So we've gone with a tree man on this build. It comes in at 1000k. So 1 tree man, 1 dwarf runner, 1 dwarf slayer, 1 dwarf blitzer, 2 dwarf blockers. So every dwarf you've got maxed out on dwarves. 4 linemen to take you up to 10, 11 with a tree man, 13, 12 and 13. Yeah, 13 total with the halfling. Is it 13 or is it 12? Just 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 10, 11, 12 players with the halflings. So the vision for this team, tree man on the line, 2 dwarf blockers with it, you've got dwarves you can maneuver in the backfield, you've got the halflings. It's going to be a slow team, and that loner is going to hurt them. So I think starting out with the 3 rerolls is definitely worth considering, because you still have 4 humans 2 halflings, and you're going to need to save. You're going to need to save some bad rolls there at point. If you want to run OWA and you want to have a mixture of all the races, you can do it like this. This is the Dwarf-heavy version. One thing you can do is drop a halfling and change the tree man for an ogre, and the same thing goes for the human heavy build. Is you could drop the ogre and take a halfling, another halfling, and a tree man instead. So that's what I mean. You get so much variety in this team, which is why I think it's probably one of its biggest selling points. So with an expensive team like this, let's see what you can afford if you do not take a big guy, as tempting as they are. So what do we get here? This roster comes in 12 players, 985k, no big guy, only 2 rerolls. Hear me out. 1 runner, 1 slayer, 1 blitzer, 2 blockers. So all the dwarves there. All the dwarves. Human thrower, sure hands piece, blitzer, blocker, got the block, 1 catcher, so basically you get 1 of everything here except the big guy, no halflings, 4 linemen. Okay, so this is your mixed team of humans and dwarves. Only 2 rerolls. If you think about it, the runner, the slayer, the blitzer, and the 2 blockers all have loner, so you're kind of incentivized when you've got a team full of loner positionals to question whether or not you want to take extra rerolls, because you are going to be gambling with them. So the same could be said of all of these rosters. So the Dwarf-heavy roster has got the same, technically more if you include the big guy, amount of loners. Having 3 is great if that's where your driving force of the team is. Having 2 should be okay if you accept the fact that you're not going to be able to use them on the loner pieces. But with this roster, you've got the human thrower and the human blitzer and the human catcher, who, although they suffer from animosity with the other parts of the team, will be absolutely fine operating together. So what you've got is a mini bunch of dwarves, so 2 blockers for the line. You've got blitzer, a runner as a reserve ball carrier, you've got the slayer as your main attack blitzer, and then you've got a small human team on the other side to actually control the ball, maneuver, pitch and catch. There you've got a thrower and the catcher. You've got a lot of options. I think this is a good start to get really brewing heavy on this team. The only other thing you could do is drop both of the dwarf blockers and replace it with an ogre to really go for max strength. There's a lot of variety in these teams. This way you get dwarves and you get humans. And then we've got old world soup, which is very similar to my last comment actually. 1 ogre, 1 thrower, 1 blitzer, 1 slayer, 2 blockers. So we've lost the blitzer and the runner from the dwarves. For 4 human linemen, 1 halfling, and 3 rerolls. I actually think Old World Soup is my favourite OWA roster. Think about it. You get the ogre, you've got a halfling to throw, you've got a thrower and a blitzer from the human team who can use those rerolls. You've got 4 linemen as well who can, along with the halfling. You've got a slayer, so if you want to go just nuke some stuff, honestly, the Slayer with Block and Frenzy is going to make a really effective offensive piece. And you've got 2 Dwarf blockers to go on the line there as well. So Ogre on the line, 2 Dwarf blockers, the Slayer running rogue. You know, you've got the Halfling to be thrown and to do stuff. The vulnerability of this roster is that it is only 11 players and the Halfling is strength 2. So if the Halfling dies, you're going to be playing down players, and the Slayer and the 2 blockers do have loner. So does the ogre. So it's going to be a very difficult team to pilot. You get to paint a halfling, you get to paint some dwarves, you get to paint an ogre, you get to paint a human, and that is the really interesting thing about this this roster, is that you've got 4 races there. You can again drop the ogre and take a tree man and another halfling if you want to boost your player numbers up. You've got 5k spare, so technically what you could do is drop the ogre, drop a halfling, 30, 50, I was going to say you might be able to squeeze in a catcher, but you can't, which is a bit of a shame. But, oh, there's just so much to do. If you want another halfling, it's 30k. With the development of this team, each one of these players, not quite so much as the old system. In the old system, you took the role, didn't you? And, oh, I've got a strength 4 guy, he's now this. You have to kind of pre-plan a little bit more in the new system. What it does mean is you can start early and take some random skills. The ogre, for example, all of the random strength skills, there's only a couple I wouldn't be very excited about him having. Even something like strong arm is going to be really useful if you want to go for that stretch play with the halflings, because you're going to be able to buy more. And having those extra players is not going to hurt you. Fouling, throwing, just stunty nonsense. This is going to be a really interesting team, and I cannot wait to play against it. I don't massively want to pilot it, but I do want one in my league because I think they're going to become infamous, and the players themselves are going to become very famous. Anyway, that wraps up OWA. Let me know in the comments below if you like any of these rosters, because believe me, there's like 4,000 different iterations, and I just picked a few off what I thought were my favourites. So yeah, let me know if you like any of these rosters, if you're going to be playing OWA in Blood Bowl 2020. Thanks very much for joining me, and I will see you again soon.